Hey everyone, welcome back. This week I thought I'd do something a little different, and for most of the week I've been pestering and bothering you all by asking you to send me your questions about book cover design. Also, thank you very much for all of the tweets and retweets from last week. As ever, I always appreciate it. This is still brand new to me. The amount of and I have to cut out. I could probably just create. Oh, there's another one. I could probably create about a 20-minute film. Right, so first question is from Eric Wilder, which is, has retail space ever had an impact on a design decision? Yes. There has hardly been a week in my 10-year career where someone hasn't picked up a book and walked about 100 meters away and held it up and said, can you read it from this distance? I'd have to say that for me, the biggest impact was the sort of advent of ebooks. So suddenly the thumbnail on Amazon was something we really had to care about. It wasn't something that we really thought about at the time. We've been selling books on Amazon for a long time up until that point already. And the JPEG, the thumbnail, has always been that big. Suddenly, you had to have massive type on these little thumbnails, and that was a thing for a good 6 months to a year. And you do want to make sure that your book stands out, but I don't think having 0.500 type on every single cover is a good idea. Okay, next question. This one is from Keith Bloomfield. Hey Keith, he asked, which paperback do you think had a better cover than the hardback? That's hard. Off the top of my head, I'd have to say J.K. Rowling's. How do you pronounce that? I'd have to say it was a Casual Vacancy cover. The hardback, I really like the hardback. It was very different. I do remember a lot of people were talking about it for no reason really, just because it was different. It was the next book after Harry Potter series. I prefer the paperback simply because it feels much more mass market. Feels less literary. I really love the way that the foreground to the background of all the buildings in between of this village, of this town, sort of give the layers, which is exactly what the book's about. There's several layers of the story. This one's from Joanna Cannon. Is there a jacket, past or present, that you wish you had designed? Yes, this one by John Gray, 1984. It's one of my favourite novels, but this is definitely my favourite version of the jacket. I pretty much wish I had John Gray's talent. Okay, so this is from the beautiful Natasha Hughes, who asks, what is your number one tip for starting out as a freelance designer? I was freelance for 4 years. I would say the number one tip is to don't be scared. It's hard. It is so much hard work, and it always will be hard work. But in your first year, you fear. You really do fear about paying your rent and paying your bills. But be persistent with yourself. Don't piss people off by emailing them all the time and pestering them for work, and market yourself very well. I'd say that was my second tip. So I'd say my first tip is to not give in to the fear, and my second tip is learn how to promote yourself, whether that's social media, an awesome website. I remember one of the first things I did when I was a freelancer was I contacted the very talented Mark Ecorp, who was art director at Canongate at the time, and I said, look, I'm willing to do a cover for you, I'll do it for 50%, so that if it's rejected, it's hardly any money at all. And he was the only person to take me up on that offer, and I'm so glad he did, because then I did a series of books for Canongate, and that really, really helped my career then from that point onwards, and it gave me confidence as well. So I've had a couple of questions that are kind of similar, so I thought I'd just group them into one, and that's from David Hanna and Mark Dawson. Basically, they're asking whether it's important that a genre is obvious from its cover, and whether you can maybe go completely left field with a genre. Say, if it's a romance, could you give it a different cover? They sort of sit in between. I think genres are important. for consumers, you walk into a shop, you see what you like. I know that books are often placed on tables in Waterstones with books that are similar, covers that are similar, and therefore the content will be similar. If you bought one of these books, then you are likely to buy one of the ones that are sitting next to it. However, I think there's always a chance to do something completely different. David Mitchell, for example, his books are literary, really, and they have romance, and they have a bit of fantasy and a bit of sci-fi, and I think his covers have sort of reflected that uniqueness. But you know, I worked on Seven Eves, which is hardcore science fiction. You know, we tried some different covers, we tried some more literary covers, David Mitchell-esque, but they just weren't right. They weren't right. His core audience, his core base, science fiction, real proper science fiction. So we felt it was beneficial to have a book that felt like it was sci-fi. You know, that's why it's so much fun working on literary novels. You get to do something completely different. It doesn't have to relate to the book. Mass market fiction tends to need to have that relation to a genre. It really, that's where their strength lies. So there was one question which was cheeky, but thank you very much, Borough Press, for asking. And they asked what was my favourite cover that I'd ever designed for them. I have to say it's this one, which you were lovely enough to send over to me. It was one of the last books that I designed for Borough Press when I was at HarperCollins before I left in March this year. I illustrated the idea was that as it was Infinite Home, that you could flip it upside down and it does the same on the back. And here are flaps. Oh, there you go. I hope that was good. I hope you learned something, or maybe you already knew it. I hope I wasn't too obvious. One of the things that came out of this week, which I thought was absolutely hilarious. So I set up a hashtag #AskStu, Steve Laird. I'm so bad with names. You think I'd learn with a name like Bache, B-A-C-H-E, and no one ever gets that one right. They set up a hashtag #MaskStu, and there was a couple of good variations, which I quite like. And this one was from Dan Benworth Gray. Which is awesome. Thank you very much. So next week I'll be back with another book cover of the week. I hope you enjoyed this one. If there are any other sorts of book cover design type, vloggy type stuff that you think I should be doing, or you have an interest in, well, just ask or comment below, or ask me on Twitter or on my new Facebook page, which is also called Books Covered. Leave all the links below. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, don't press any button, please. Thanks. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next week. Bye.